Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
all yours, Jane.
Thank you everyone for joining me for virtual hot topics. Today's May 11th, 2020, auspicious day to have a hot topics. Um, I, I'm thinking, Wendy, shall I do a quick overview of what I know from the county side, or let Charles do that, and then I will chime in with anything extra.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing we should do, Jane, actually, today, May 11th, is a special day. And for all of us who are on the call, I want to have you all join me in wishing Supervisor Parker a happy birthday. Uh, she is celebrating a very special birthday. I know a lot of folks are doing their drive-by celebrations. We dropped off some flowers to her door. And yeah, so anything special that you did for your birthday, Jane?
I was able to have a yummy dinner with one of my sisters on Saturday night. I have to sort of space things out now because I'm getting older and I can't take all the excitement at once. And then on Sunday, my other sister invited me to go on a hike up to the top of Inspiration Point. So I did that and it was really lovely. And I did get a bouquet of sweet peas on some sort of day, maybe Sunday morning. That was lovely. They're one of my favorite flowers. And I'm just enjoying the heck out of my birthday. And of course, today I get to be in sort of nonstop Zoom meetings for work. So that's a treat too. So it's great to be with you all.
Well, thank you all for joining us and wishing Jane a happy birthday. So Charles McKee, our county CAO, will be joining you, Jane, at about 5:45. But maybe there's just a couple of high points that you wanted to call out in regards to updates from the county. We'll let Charles go into more detail, but anything you
Okay.
wanted to.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So one of the things that people may be hearing about and that I want to really mention is that there are two additional testing sites available in Monterey County, one in Greenfield at the Greenfield Library and one in Salinas at the Alisal High School gym, I believe. And the each of these sites can test up to about 130 people per day. Anyone who is working with the public at all, so if you're working, you are eligible to be tested. And even if you're not working, with the public, and you just want to be tested, if you've been sheltering in place and you're just curious, you also can make an appointment to be tested. I think they're going to try to prioritize law enforcement and the frontline workers, but any member of the public is welcome to be tested. The testing is free, and you can see on this flyer, there's a phone number to call, 888-634-1123, or there's a website where you can make an appointment. Oh, ding, ding. But I can't see the website on my screen, so I can't tell you what it says. But this is really a great opportunity for us to be able to get a lot more people tested in Monterey County. So that information, I know that it will be in the chat. It's available on this flyer. So that's really great news. There also apparently is a letter going around that is looks very official, but it's fake, and it is basically saying that if you want to receive county benefits, that you must be tested for the COVID virus. This is not true. There are no such requirements to receive any benefits that the county administers. And then the letter further says that your children will be taken away from you by Child Protective Services if you test positive for the virus. That also is not true. And this is really just a really mean-spirited way to strike fear in the hearts of people who have enough concerns on their minds already. So if you hear any rumors or see them online, I think there is a communication that the county is putting out to refute this, but I think it's really going to take attention by all of us to find those incorrect, inaccurate pieces of information and set the record straight. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, oh, there we go. So on the screen now is showing the county's response, just letting people know that there is this scam letter going out. And it's making the rounds, of course. So one of the downsides of social media is the fact that these kinds of very disturbing and untrue things can spread very, very quickly. I did want to talk just for a second before Charles comes, our CAO comes online. I did want to just mention a few things. Some of the specifics that are part of our roadmap to reopening. There's a lot of talk about all of this. In fact, at the county level, the chair of our board, Chair Lopez, has established some ad hoc committees to work with businesses in the community to set out the protocols that they know or they say are doable for them to be able to keep the public and their workforce safe. So there's a lot of activity in that arena, and that's actually one of the reasons that I wanted to ask Cesar Lara to be with us tonight, because there's a lot of focus on industries and the businesses, but I'm concerned that there may not be as much attention to the workers themselves and the workforce as maybe there should be. And we'll talk more about that when he addresses us. But I did want to talk about what some of the criteria are for the county and the state to be able to loosen some of the restrictions in terms of the shelter in place. So there are a few criteria. I think they said there are 5 or 6. So one of them is that just in terms of the disease and how rapidly it's spreading in our population, we have to achieve a certain level of kind of containment of the rapidity of the spread. And so one of the criteria under that is that we can only have 1 case per 100,000 residents of the county over the course of a 2-week period. So for Monterey County, what that means is about 44 people. So if there are 44 cases of the virus that occur within a 2-week period, we're just at the edge of that parameter. And if there are less than 44 in the course of 2 weeks, then we're on the good side. And then, excuse me, the other part of that criteria is that we need to have no deaths for two weeks as well. Oh, my throat is tickling. So in addition to that, then we also have to have a lot more testing going on and the availability of testing. So these new test sites are really, really helpful. So it needs to be that 75% of the residents of the county can travel 30 minutes or less to a testing site. And those are people who live in cities or towns. And then if you live in a rural area, you need to be able to drive 60 minutes or less to a testing site. So we're looking to see how well these two testing sites help us achieve that. And then Dr. Moreno is saying also that the number of people getting tested is very important, because we really need the data to tell us how widespread the virus is in the population. Then another one of the criteria is containment. Can we kind of hold the spread of the virus kind of steady? And one of the ways that they look at that is how many case and contact tracing staff we have per 100,000 residents. So the state standard is 15 of those contact trace folks per 100,000 population. So for us, that means about 65 of those investigators would be needed in Monterey County to be able to keep track of our entire population. Right now, in Monterey County, we have almost 35 of the 65, with another almost dozen, I think, being trained right now. So we still have a need for probably about 20 more to reach the threshold that we're after. Another criteria is hospital capacity. Hospitals have to be able to accommodate 35% more patients than they currently have beds for. So they don't have to have all the beds in place or anything like that, but they do need to have the plans for the beds and the staffing and the equipment, and also, of course, the protective gear for the hospital workers. One of the things that they're saying is not only do we need to have a supply, but we need to have the supply chain in place that doesn't rely on the state of California for providing the equipment. And that's also true when we get to the vulnerable populations. We have to make sure that our skilled nursing facilities have a 14-day supply of protective equipment, and that they've reestablished their normal supply chains, so that it's not, we're not counting on the state for that supply. Those are the things that I can think of off the top of my head. There may be more, but I think that kind of gives an idea that it's doable, but it is going to take some time and some work on the part of the county staff to get us to that stage. Oh, all right. Good. I'm being corrected in the chat that it's one case in 10,000. That's right. Not one case in 100,000. So for the COVID positive, it would be one case in 10,000 over the period of 2 weeks. And I said one case in 100,000. So many numbers, so little time. And then there's a question in the chat: where may we view the recordings if we're unable to stay for the whole meeting, please? So Wendy, could you tell folks where they can find our recordings of these virtual town hall meetings?
Sure can, Jane. So we are making Hot Topics available via Zoom for those who can log in via participation right here via either their computer or phone. We're also rolling this out live on Facebook. So we've got folks, about 22 people on Facebook right now who are watching us live. And we're recording the meetings and posting them on Jane's YouTube account. So I'll go ahead and post the link, but if you just go to YouTube and search for Jane Parker, Monterey County, you can see all of our past Hot Topics video recordings, which include just a lot of great information and a lot of really great guest speakers.
Thank you, Wendy. Great. So I think, let me see if there's any other late breaking news that I heard today. One thing that we're finding, so in the last few weeks, we've talked a little bit about the alternate care site. So that's in case the hospital needs, they filled up their beds and we need more somewhere else for people to be to get care. We've talked about the alternative care site and the alternative housing sites. So the fairgrounds, Sherwood Hall, if there are people who are COVID positive who don't need a lot of care, but they need a place to be. So we've been doing a lot of planning to make sure that if we get a surge in the COVID-19 cases, that we have adequate facilities to take care of people at the level of care that they need. What we're finding is that we have been successful enough in slowing the spread of the virus that the sort of that maximum capacity that we were working for is not needed at this point. So we're just watching the situation very carefully. And I see that there's a question about whether the alternate care site, so that was the spot out at the Marina Airport with that we were putting together in conjunction with the City of Marina and Joby Aviation. There's a question whether that alternate care site counts as the part of the 35% surge capacity. And I'll have to double check that with Charles McKee when he joins us, but I think the alternate care site is actually in addition to the hospital's 35% surge planning and their ability. But I'm not 100% sure. So we'll double check that when Charles gets here. But anyway, that and then the facility at the fairgrounds, and we've been working on Sherwood Hall because we have been so successful in slowing the spread. We can now slow down our planning and our implementation of some of these things. We want to continue to plan because as we relax the restrictions, we may see some increase in the rate of transmission, and we need to be ready to care for people at the level that they need the care. So I thought that was interesting that in the first little while we were just super quickly planning for it wasn't the worst case scenario, but one of the perhaps likely scenarios. And we've just been fortunate that we're able to do such a good job with the shelter in place, thanks to all of you doing everything that you've been doing, that we can now we can just watch and be strategic about the timing and how much capacity we need when. So we're seeing some information on the screen about the numbers of people currently. So 32 is the current occupancy. Is that in the hospitals? I'm not sure because I'm not a speed reader. I don't know what we're really looking at.
Yeah, so Jane, this is for the alternate housing sites.
The housing.
Alternate housing site. So 32
Great.
Currently occupied in alternative housing sites. And the one thing I wanted to make sure people saw on the screen was that we are looking for volunteers for the alternate care site. So if anyone's interested in volunteering for the alternate care sites, either at the fairgrounds or in Salinas or in South County, we have a link where you can sign up. You would need to get training and make some minimal time commitments, but we are looking for volunteers.
And actually, Wendy, the alternate care site is
I'm sorry.
the Marina Airport Joby
Alternate house.
Aviation, which we are not needing to activate. We now think that the potential surge when that might be needed would be in the later summer or maybe the fall, but we will need volunteers. The housing sites are for both people who are COVID positive. And you see that there are 5 who we know are COVID positive who are being housed, and they are being actually housed in motel rooms at the moment. And then there are 28 who are presumed to be COVID negative, it says there, which could be, but they are under kind of isolation and quarantine so that they don't infect people where they live. They probably live in more crowded living situations. And so this is the opportunity for them to wait and see if they are COVID positive, if they come up with any symptoms, and to make sure that in case they are COVID positive, that they don't infect other people in their living environment. So currently in motel rooms, we have 32 people housed, and we have served 35 over time. So again, you can see that the numbers are not in the hundreds or the several hundreds. So we've got the fairgrounds ready, but we so far are not using it because the motel accommodations are sufficient for the population that and the needs, the level of need that we have at the moment. So we're able to move into a longer term way of thinking and strategizing about our resources and what might be needed when. And we're doing that also with some of the food resources. And anyway, so it's a shift in our thinking. So luckily we've done a lot of planning, so we're pretty much ready to go if we need to, but our need to actually implement some of these things is being delayed, if it's even needed at all. So I'm going to just go ahead and maybe turn this over to Cesar Lara, and we'll just pivot to Charles when he gets here, if he's able to join us. So thank you so much, Cesar, for being with us. And as I said earlier, I'm very interested in the ways that as we reopen, that maybe we can find ways to have our systems and the way we treat people be more fair than the old normal. So this COVID-19 period has really shown us some things that we maybe knew in the back of our minds, but it's showing us the disproportionate impact that situations like this have on our workforce. And so Cesar and his colleagues are really looking at the ways that we can, in an organized and concerted way, try to make, as we go into our new normal, have that be a lot more equitable and fair for our workforce. So thank you for being here, Cesar, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Thank you very much, Jane, for this opportunity, and Wendy for helping facilitate this conversation. But I think it's been difficult for a lot of community members in the Monterey County area, and it's been really a hard environment for working families. Many of working families have had the same challenges they had the day before shelter in place, and are having the same struggles today, but at a bigger scale. And when we've talked to our union members over the years, they've always told us that in Monterey County, it's hard to live here because the cost of living is so high, and there's a lack of affordable daycare, and there's a lack of healthcare services for everybody in Monterey County. And this COVID-19 era has really showed us that the problems are really acute to many of those that are working in Monterey County. 65% of all jobs in hospitality are in hospitality and agriculture. And so that means that close to 7 out of every 10 jobs in Monterey County are in hospitality and agriculture. And what we learned is that both those industries are facing major challenges. And the 4th largest industry in Monterey County is healthcare. And so it's all the hospital workers and kind of workers. So our big industries in Monterey County are facing challenges. And that means that the workers that are in the front line are facing those. And I think we've been able to really work really hard in this era to try and protect workers. You know, working families have been essential workers. Those are the grocery worker members that, you know, work in all the groceries in Monterey County. Those are the farm workers that work every day out in the fields, and they all need protections. And for those that are unionized, we've worked really hard to ensure that they have proper protections in place to make sure that farm workers have protective gears. And really want to thank Governor Newsom for providing some of those. Last week we got a shipment of, I think, 90,000 masks for farm workers. But I think we need to take a step back and really look at what are we asking workers to do, especially and soon we'll be facing the question about how do we reopen the economy, and how do we reopen the economy in an equitable way to ensure that working families are uplifted and leading a path forward to the new normal in Monterey County. And so as the labor movement, we came up with a Bill of Rights that we feel that all workers across California should be having. And I know I send it over to Wendy if you could please show that graphic. But we wanted to kind of highlight a couple of things and wanted to use this opportunity to talk to you, Jane, and everybody out there to really look at the way we're going to reopen the economy in not just Monterey County, but the rest of the states, to ensure that we have first, public safety, that we protect frontline workers. And we're hearing reports of agricultural workers not having enough protection. And we kind of praise the county of Monterey and the industries to come up with recommendations for safety measures for agricultural workers, but they're not mandates. And so what we're hearing out in the field, that so many workers are not getting the proper protection. And at the same time, we're also getting reports that not all employers are kind of following the rules. And so we kind of want to make sure before we reopen the economy that workers kind of have that in place. We also want to make sure that the government steps up, and I think we've been seeing that over and over again through different means that the government has stepped up in the state of California. We worked with the federal government to expand unemployment benefits for workers. But I think there's a lot more there that could be done, because what we're hearing is that so many workers right now have applied for unemployment and are not receiving the benefits that they're applying for, and they're receiving long wait periods. Or we have workers that have been laid off since middle of March and have not received benefits yet, or the first unemployment check. And so that's unacceptable. And the third kind of check mark that we want to highlight is holding corporations accountable. At the end, many corporations are getting massive bailouts, and we need to make sure that we protect the workers that are really making them the money, and to make sure that we don't bail out the industry, but kind of let workers on the side. And so making sure that we hold them accountable. We also have to look at the new gig economy. So many workers right now aren't really classified as workers. They're working so many hours with companies and corporations like Uber and other delivery services, that we need to make sure that they have complete benefits, because we have to remember, if you're a gig employee, you don't have the same level of protection with unemployment, with workers' comp, and with other benefits. The other area we want to do is extend paid sick leave for all workers. And we have to remember that you know, a lot of us that have jobs that have allowed us to do this kind of telecommuting aren't available for all workers in not just Monterey County, but across the nation. And that so many workers are just laid off. They're at home, not getting a paycheck, or waiting for that unemployment check to come in, and they don't have any benefits. And so many workers right now might be considered essential workers, and we've seen this so often in the agriculture industry, where so many of the cases that have come through Monterey County have been agricultural workers, because they don't feel like they could be let go. And I'm happy to announce that Governor Newsom signed an executive order last Thursday that extended workers' comp benefits for workers that get COVID-19 as connection to their work. And so that's important to kind of point out to the community, that there is benefits available, but so often workers don't know what benefits they have coming to themselves. And then protecting immigrant workers. A lot of people don't know that Monterey County per capita has the highest percentage of undocumented individuals, more than any county in California. And so as based of our kind of general population in Monterey County, we have a lot of undocumented workers that A, hold up this economy, and B, are just residents in Monterey County. And for Monterey County, I think there's a misnomer. A lot of the undocumented individuals, residents that live in Monterey County, are older than 18 years old by a huge percentage. Of the 55,000 undocumented individuals on average in Monterey County, about 48,000 of those are older than 18 years old. And so those are, the people that work in our restaurants, those are people that work out in our agricultural fields. And so often those are the workers that don't have the benefits. And what we're facing is so many workers have been laid off in industries that have a high percentage of undocumented individuals. The hospitality industry, it's our second largest industry in Monterey County, but so often the workers there, a good percentage of them are undocumented. And it's one thing working for a company, but it's another thing to apply for unemployment benefits or other benefits that they have coming, even though every paycheck they receive, taxes are being taken out and kind of benefits are taken out. But now in this time when they're laid off, they're reluctant to apply for the services that they paid for, because at the end, unemployment benefits are kind of funded by everybody's paycheck, including theirs. And the last couple is preserving jobs, wages, and healthcare in this COVID recovery. I think we've been seeing it in a lot of local jurisdictions to talk about smaller budgets. And I think, in a month or so, Jane and others on the Board of Supervisors are going to be looking at what are they going to do with the amount of money that they have to run the county services that they provide. And we're going to have less money, because as we kind of see it, people are spending less money in the stores, are not going out because they're in shelter in place. And that means that there's less money that the county is going to have. And one of the conversations that we need to have as residents in Monterey County is, what are we going to do with smaller budgets in local jurisdictions, and make sure that we don't continue to make the mistakes of the past. I think that, the County of Monterey has committed to equitable practices. They've been working really hard with many in the county for, governing for racial equity practices and everything. And this is when the test is really going to come into place, because as we have smaller budgets, we're going to have to figure out how do we develop and implement smarter, equitable practices in budgets. Now that we have less money coming in, what are we going to do to preserve the services that the County of Monterey provides, that so many of us depend on, with less staff? and making sure that we make smart choices to kind of address those realities. It's going to be hard, and we're going to have to step up. And I would like to be happy to announce that, you know, the other kind of areas that we wanted to look at is a moratorium on evictions, foreclosures, and rent gouging for residents in Monterey County. And the county of Monterey was one of the first counties to, you know, to step up through the leadership of Jane Parker, Luis Alejo, Chris Lopez, and the rest of the Board of Supervisors. You stepped up and you kind of answered that, Governor Newsom followed up with that. But the problem is that the policies that were put in place have been set up to allow somebody to not pay rent because they don't have money now, but it doesn't mean that they're off the hook. And so what we're going to see is that as soon as we kind of have those protections lifted, landlords are going to come to tenants saying, you owe us 3 months worth of rent. And when a farm worker, when a hospitality worker that get paid very little to begin with, are asked to pay, okay, you know, can you pay back those rents that you owe us? It's going to be really hard, and we're fearful that the residents are going to face evictions, not now, but in the future. And so we need to figure out what we're going to do with that and how are we going to protect workers, because currently, you know, Monterey County is one of the most expensive places to live. You know, the cost of living is really high. So many of our workers pay a high percentage of their salaries to pay rent or their mortgage. And what are we going to do when those workers that are the agricultural workers, the hospitality workers, and the other essential workers that are either are not working today or will go back to work? What are they going to do with the cost of housing and kind of the backlog of those? And the last thing I kind of want to leave you with, and I want to open up to Jane to kind of ask if there's any questions that she has, is this is a good opportunity to really look at workers that don't have a union, and use this opportunity and this platform to, you know, to say that this is the time to really look at joining a union, because at the end, collectively, you know, workers coming together to talk to their employers to make sure that they have equitable, you know, salaries and wages collectively is a lot more effective than trying to do it on their own. Because what we found is happy employees sometimes don't need a union. But if you're unhappy and unsafe and the employer is not following the rules, you need a collective voice like a labor union. But I know there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that we do equitable practices to make sure that we kind of are able to answer this call, because I think we need to not continue the mistakes of the past, and use this reopening as an opportunity to really look at equitable practices, not just that the county of Monterey could do, but others could do. You know, Jane, if you have any questions.
Thank you. Actually, our attendees do have some questions that I want to pass along to you. One is, you mentioned the gig economy workers. Has there been any outreach to people who are affected by the AB5 law here in Monterey County to kind of see how they're doing and let them know what they're you know, what's available to them?
Yeah, you know, statewide and locally, we've been outreaching to as many, you know, workers as we can to kind of explain to them what rights they have. But in so many cases, they have limited rights because of the way that they're classified as workers. In the beginning of the year, California started a new law called AB5, and it was a bill to make sure that we make sure that workers are classified as workers correctly, because so often they're classified as independent contractors. And for so many workers, it means that they have less protection, so they have to rely on their own salary and kind of gig income to support everything. And they didn't have workers' comp. You know, they don't. You know, they rarely have healthcare benefits and others. And so we've been outreaching to as many workers as possible, but we've also been preparing ourselves because the large gig economy employers have put together $160 million for our November ballot measure to try and overturn 85 because
Wow.
it's not to their benefit. And so as workers, we've been also preparing for a fight in November.
Wow. Not surprising, I guess. Yeah, thank you for that. There's a question, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but when you were talking about the unemployment insurance, someone was asking, why is it that the Economic Development Department, I think that's what EDD stands for, why is it that they are taking so long to process people's applications? They had made a promise at the beginning that, you know, waiting periods would be waived and so that people could get their benefits right away. So it sounds like that's not happening.
Well, it's the highest unemployment rate we've had in a generation, and so I think a lot of it is infrastructure. I think not enough time has been put into making sure that practices and procedures are put in place for this wave of employees. We're at 14% unemployment, and 90 days ago we were less than half. We were at don't quote me, but 5 or 6% statewide. And so just imagine the amount of applications and processes it takes to help everybody else.
Yeah, it was a good promise, but I don't think they knew what they were going to get hit with. But meantime, though, people are hurting, and it's one of the challenges that we see. I mean, if people were getting their unemployment benefits, they might have the money to buy food or pay their rent or part of the rent. So it's one of these cascading things that when one part of the system doesn't work, it really impacts people. One person was asking, and I don't know if you have a specific answer to this, but they're really concerned about the undocumented workers and the families. What can we do to ensure that they are getting taken care of during?
Yeah, and well, the biggest thing is agricultural workers are the real backbone of Monterey County economy, and right now with the workers' comp order that Governor Newsom signed last week, it means that if you're undocumented, you could apply for workers' comp benefits. And so that's a big step forward for California to do that. And at the end, I think so many workers that have been facing these challenges, need to make sure that they work with their employer, because at the end, agriculture is a multi-billion-dollar industry in Monterey County, and I praise kind of the advisory measures the industry has taken, and I can even praise Governor Newsom for providing the mask. But this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that could step up a lot more to make sure that they try and provide benefits to the workers that are really the mechanism and way in ways that they make their money.
And another person is concerned about the fact that the rate of COVID-19 infection among agricultural workers, I think you mentioned this too, that it's high. Of course, they have been working, and they, but I guess I wonder if you have any thoughts about, I mean, do you think that there's enough education and outreach going on? Is the agricultural industry doing enough? They said they wanted to handle all this, and I know they're coordinating with the county, but there's, are there further things that you think should be done?
Well, the biggest thing is to look at the data. I think the highest number of people that have gotten COVID-19 have lived in the 93905 zip code and 93906 zip code. And if you really analyze that community, you'll learn that because of the housing crisis that we've been facing in Monterey County, with the cost of living being so high, you have high density in those areas. And so beyond the industry that they work with, it's their living conditions. And so many of the community members in those two communities, in the 93905 zip code and 93906, which is basically East Salinas, have been facing challenges not just recently, but for generations. And those are the communities that we need to do a lot of work in to make sure that in the long term, we look at more affordable housing, that we look at more equitable practices in regards to entities like the County of Monterey investing, and also the City of Salinas investing in making sure that they're protected. It's not a surprise that you have a high percentage of agricultural workers, considering that they're the highest percentage of workers in Monterey County. If close to 50% of workers work in agriculture, it's not surprising that you have a high percentage of agricultural workers being sick. And so just by math and by kind of looking at it, take a step back beyond where they work. Look at where they live and look at their benefits and their salary levels. An average salary of a farm worker in Monterey County is about $28,000 a year. And to ensure that you're able to, pay housing, support your family, make sure that your children are supported, you have to make sacrifices. And the first thing you do is you live in high dense areas. And so beyond looking at their coworkers infecting them, look at the community that they work in. I mean that they live in. That there's a lot of density and a lack of open space, a lack of privacy for so many agricultural workers. And so it's definitely an area that beyond what happened was there's already been a lot of targeted work being done by organizations like CCA, Center for Community Advocacy, or like Building Healthy Communities that have been really, working really hard to uplift some of the challenges and make sure that we work forward to make sure that there's equitable practices in the way that the government does business. But we also have to look at the way industry does business. Well, agriculture and hospitality are our top two industries. The third largest industry is government, so that includes everybody. It's from federal workers to county workers to city workers. But the fourth is healthcare. And so the top two industries in Monterey County pay very little. And right now, who is being affected the worst is agricultural workers. They're considered essential, and in so many cases they're not given proper protection. And also for hospitality workers, where they have been literally laid off. One of our unions, Unite Here, 483, has faced a 95% layoff rate. 95%. Basically, less than skeleton crew of workers being left to make sure that that the building stays open. But in regards to people having a paycheck to survive, that industry has been hit the hardest. And economic experts are saying that industry is not going to recover anytime soon. I don't know about you, Jane, but I don't see myself planning a vacation this summer, which means that's money going into a hotel, making sure that the restaurant that I eat at get the wages. I'm most likely going to stay home, and so many people are doing that. And for the peninsula, if you see the unemployment rates in Monterey County, where they've been hit the hardest has been Big Sur and Monterey, with most of the Warren notices. And for everybody that you want to know what a Warren notice is, if you're an employer and have more than 50 workers that are laid off, you have to officially notify the county, the state, and the city that you're doing that layoff. And most of those have been happening in the peninsula, in Big Sur and Monterey, because those are the hospitality workers that are being laid off.
I think that's a good point, Cesar. And we had a question earlier about, when do we think that what's the timeline for the hospitality industry to reopen? And I think it really depends, but I think they may be among the last to come back, because meeting the conditions to keep the workers safe and keep the public safe, it's going to be hard until there's a treatment and until there's a vaccine. So it's going to be an industry that is going to take a while to recover, I think.
Well, it's going to take a while to recover, but we also have to think outside the box. And so you have skilled workers that work in an industry that could prepare meals, for example. And so, the question is why can't we use those industrial kitchens that were used 3 months ago to provide food for a conference, to provide meals for senior citizens, for homeless, for those essential workers that are not living at home because they don't want, we have nurses that are working 10, 12-hour shifts and going to a hotel room because they don't want to take, they don't want to go home and expose, their families to this stuff. So can we rethink what hospitality workers are currently doing now? Reopen some of these industrial kitchens to provide meals for those populations, and put some workers back to work. And you have workers that know what they're doing. Providing meals for 1,000 people at the Hyatt for a conference could easily be converted into providing senior citizens warm meals that we could work with people like Meals on Wheels and others to make sure that seniors have warm meals, because they don't want to even walk up out their front door for anything because they're scared of what's going to happen.
You bet. Yeah, they're one of the vulnerable populations. So one of the other issues that people really resonated with and were concerned about was the whole question of the eviction moratorium and how the need for protections and some kind of way to help pay that rent may be necessary. We had a comment that the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership is working on developing regional recommendations on how the housing moratoriums should work once the shelter-in-place order is lifted. And I think another person was talking about the fact that landlords, it's a daisy chain, or what do you call it, domino effect, that if the landlords aren't getting rent, that we need to be making sure that the mortgage companies and the banks are also providing some level of forgiveness on the payments that the landlords have to make on their properties. So which I understand many of them are, but I don't think it's as organized an effort as the eviction moratorium.
Well, it's not, but there's a lot of work that we could do there. I think we learned a lot in the 2006, 7, 8 timeline when the federal government stepped up and bailed out a lot of mortgage companies. That the question needs to be, what can we do to help renters, to help those that have mortgages that are really in need. Some communities have stepped up. City of San Jose passed an ordinance to kind of forgive rent for workers, and it's one of these questions it's above our pay rate, because you are talking about a domino effect. But I think there's some work that cities and counties, like the County of Monterey, could do to tell the federal government. Jimmy Panetta, I know would be open to it, is to kind of say, can we do a stimulus bill to ensure that renters are protected, and to figure out a way where we could not just hold rents and kind of have them stack up, but how can we forgive some of the money to do that. Right.
Thank you so much, Cesar. I want to give Charles McKee, our County Administrative Officer, has joined our conversation, and I want to give him a chance to say a few words too. And there's a question from Facebook that might provide a nice segue and put him probably very much on the spot. And that is, you may have been on the call, Charles, when Cesar was talking about the challenge with the unemployment insurance and how long people are having to wait. And one of our attendees asked what the county is doing to provide outreach to workers and assistance to help them apply for the, both for probably benefits that the county administers, but also are we letting them know about the opportunity for undocumented folks, for instance, to apply for unemployment insurance. So just put you on the spot.
Thank you, Supervisor Parker. And before we get into it, I hope before I got on the call, I hope everybody wished you a happy birthday. And to recognize that you're sharing your birthday with us on Hot Topics. I think
what better way to celebrate a birthday, right?
pretty good. So I missed some of your question. I lost a bit of it, but it sounded like it was related to how the county can help or is helping in the unemployment situation and helping people be aware of the resources. Is that correct?
Yes, and particularly folks who are undocumented, who normally, I think, don't or can't apply, and that some of the process for applying for unemployment is being waived. I'm not sure if that's true, but anyways, just ways for them to, what outreach are we doing to make sure people know what benefits they qualify for and how to get them?
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's a good question. And I know that I wish I had a better answer than what I'm going to provide. And that I know that our economic development division with the workforce development group is aware of the situation and works with locally to get the answers out to people that have questions about unemployment. And I know that there is you can call locally and get the help in addition to getting the help from EDD. They can't actually make all the application pieces go forward, so that has to go through EDD. And I guess on my snide comment will be that EDD did waive the waiting period, but then they weren't able to get to all the applications. So the waiting period, being waived really didn't help everybody. But I think, as Cesar said, it was it was a structural issue with the numbers that we're talking about, because I think unfortunately we could be heading into unemployment numbers that near the Great Depression numbers, and that could be really serious for all of us, recognizing especially those who are without a job. And the county's workforce development folks are able to assist in that process. They're not the final in it, but they can help with that process.
Great, thank
but
you.
But we do need to get more publication out if people aren't aware of that. That's clear.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that probably has to go out over and over and over again, because you don't pay attention until you need it, and then where is it?
Right.
So we have a number of other comments and questions that would be great to discuss further, which we will, some having to do with childcare, and as people return to work, the need for that, the continuing issues of so many school-age children not having access to the equipment that they need, or the bandwidth to actually do their remote schooling. I mean, there are just so many issues that we're confronting. And Charles, before you got here, I talked a little bit about the ad hoc committees, some of the criteria for the reopening into and beyond stage 2, the CPS fake document that was going out, and then this sort of shift that we're doing from looking at maximum everything everywhere to really now starting to look at a longer term, planning and implementing horizon. And so I think that covered a number of items that you might have been going to discuss, but I thought I'd give you a chance in the 1 minute remaining if there's anything else that you want to let people know about from your perspective that the county is doing.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, there are a couple things. One, I want to make sure that everybody's aware of on the childcare front, the initiative by the governor's office with mychildcare.ca.gov so they can have those resources. You can click on that and put in your zip code and find childcare resources available, and it'll even show which childcare centers might be booked up, which is a kind of a nice thing to know, so you're not wasting your time running around. The other thing that I think is important right now to kind of pivot to, the reopening issue that everybody is talking about. There's obviously pressure from all different perspectives on what the county should do, what the state should do, and some say we need to push and open and open and open, and some say we need to slow it down. We're opening too quickly, and I'm hoping we can find the right balance here, because there's so much there's so much risk in taking the wrong move. Whether you open more slowly or more quickly, there's risk in either one of those, and so we want to use the data that's available to us. One of the key pieces of that is obviously testing, and we got those 2 new sites here in Monterey County to do testing. And as Cesar mentioned, the biggest impact right now in cases is in East Salinas, and so we're pretty pleased that one of our testing sites is at the Alisal High School in East Salinas, and we want to make sure that everybody's aware of that site and aware of the Greenfield site, so that we can get as many people tested as possible. Understand that they're not
Oops, Charles, we're losing you.
and any additional. Uh-oh. Any better there?
You went very sort of for a good chunk of that last bit, and we have reached the end of our time. So
Okay.
I'm sorry that we are ending on that note, but I think I started with the testing and you're ending with the testing, so that's perfect, because we do want the word to get out there that people should make an appointment, get tested. It's open to the public and anyone who is working. So thank you so much, CAO McKee, for being here. Thanks so much, Cesar Lara. We can clearly, I think these labor and workforce issues are going to be with us and will need attention all the way through. So, and thanks to everyone who was here tonight. You really are helping make my birthday about as happy as a girl could wish for. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week, Monday evening at 5:30 for another virtual Hot Topics. Take care, be safe, be kind.